Think about last year. It probably doesn't feel that long ago. Now think about when you were 10. One school year felt endless. Summer vacation felt like it lasted forever. A single week before your birthday felt like a month of waiting. Nothing about time itself changed. 60 seconds was 60 seconds when you were 10. 60 seconds is 60 seconds now. So why does your brain insist that it did? This is not a feeling you're imagining. It is not nostalgia distorting your memory. Something is genuinely happening inside your brain that makes the same amount of time feel completely different depending on how old you are. And the explanation is stranger than most people expect. The first clue is surprisingly simple. Your brain does not record time the way a clock does. A clock measures every second equally. Tick, 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 all the same weight, all the same length, adding up in a perfectly even line. Your brain records experiences, and not all experiences get recorded equally. When something is new, unfamiliar, surprising, your brain pays close attention. It encodes the details. It commits things to memory with care. It creates what neuroscientists call a rich memory trace. Dense, detailed, full of texture. When something is familiar, routine, expected, your brain barely bothers. It already knows what this is. It has seen this before. It filters most of the experience out and stores almost nothing. Think about the last commute you remember clearly versus the last 100 commutes that blurred into nothing. The ones that were different. A strange encounter, an unexpected delay, a song that came on at exactly the right moment. Those you remember. The others dissolved. When you look back at any period of your life, what you are actually measuring is not time. You are measuring how many distinct memories you formed. A period packed with new experiences, new places, new people, new challenges, leaves behind hundreds of memory markers. When you look back at it, your brain reads all those markers and concludes, that was a long time. A lot happened. A period of routine and repetition leaves behind almost nothing. When you look back at it, your brain reads the empty space and concludes, that went fast. Barely anything happened. When you were a child, almost everything was new. Every classroom was unfamiliar at first. Every friendship was being built from scratch. Every summer was filled with things you hadn't done before or hadn't done enough times to stop noticing. Your brain was encoding constantly, working hard, laying down memory after memory, because it had no existing template to filter things out against. The result is that childhood, even objectively short periods of it, feels long when you look back, dense with memory, full of distinct moments you can still reach. Now think about a week at a job you've had for 5 years. Monday through Friday, roughly the same. The same commute, the same desk, the same meetings, the same lunch. Your brain records almost none of it. Not because nothing happened, but because nothing happened that your brain hadn't already seen enough times to consider worth storing. When Friday arrives and you wonder where the week went, this is the answer. The week didn't go anywhere. Your brain just chose not to record most of it. There's a second piece to this that operates differently. But here's where it gets even stranger. Your brain doesn't actually have one way of measuring time. It has two. One measures time while you're living it. The other measures it when you look back. And surprisingly, they often completely disagree. A boring afternoon meeting feels painfully slow while you're sitting through it. You check the clock every few minutes. It feels like it will never end. But a week later, you barely remember it happened. It collapses into almost nothing. A vacation does the opposite. While you're living it, the days seem to fly by because there's so much happening. But when you look back, that same week feels enormous, rich with detail, full of moments your brain decided were worth keeping. This is why the years that seem to disappear while you're living them can feel surprisingly full when you remember them. And why long, repetitive stretches of life often vanish almost completely in hindsight. Your brain is running two different clocks. and they rarely tell the same time. There is a third explanation that is simpler but just as unsettling. When you were 5 years old, 1 year was 20% of your entire life. It was a huge slice, an enormous proportion of everything you had ever experienced. When you are 40, 1 year is 2.5% of your life. The same year, the same 365 days. But now it represents a fraction of something much larger. Some researchers believe this is part of why time seems to accelerate. Not just because of how your brain records memory, but because of simple proportion. Each year becomes a smaller and smaller percentage of the total you've lived. And your brain, which is always making relative comparisons rather than absolute ones, registers years accordingly. A year at 10 is a landmark, a significant chunk of everything. A year at 50 is one of many, one page in a very long book. The math doesn't change how time actually passes, but it may change how significant any individual year feels when it arrives and when it goes. Now, here is the part that makes this more than just a curiosity. If the speed of time is largely determined by how many new experiences your brain has to encode, then the rate at which time feels like it is passing is, at least in part, within your influence. Not completely, not simply, but meaningfully. Periods of life that feel full, that feel long in the best sense, that leave behind enough memories to make you feel like you lived them are almost always periods when something was new. A new city, a new skill being learned for the first time, a new relationship in its early stages when everything is still being discovered, a new challenge that required you to actually pay attention. None of this means you need to fill every moment with something dramatic. But it does mean that routine, while comfortable, has a cost that doesn't show up immediately. It shows up later. When you look back and the years have compressed into a handful of memories that could fit on a single page. So the next time an entire year seems to disappear, before you've even realized it began, remember this. The clock didn't speed up. Your brain simply remembered less of it. Time is exactly what it has always been. What changed is how much of it your brain decided was worth keeping. A year that feels like it vanished was probably a year filled with familiarity. The same places, the same routines, the same experiences repeated often enough that your brain stopped treating them as new. A year that feels long in hindsight is usually the opposite. A year filled with enough novelty that your brain had no choice but to keep taking notes. Time doesn't speed up as you get older. Your memories simply become farther apart. Basically, the older you get, the less your brain records the ordinary. And when there's less to remember, the years seem to disappear. Subscribe if you want to understand more about the strange things your brain actually does.